Thank you to the organization for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to present you my work today. So as you will see, although it's also related to functional electrical stimulation, my work is pretty different to what we have seen today, and particularly this morning, because here FES will be used for strengthening and for rowing. So before talking about rowing, just some quick reminders regarding spinal cord injury, exercise, and electrical stimulation. As you all know, spinal cord injury is often associated with sedentarity, muscle atrophy, and a decreased aerobic capacity, inducing lots of modifications, muscular changes, cardiorespiratory changes, but also modification at the metabolic level and at the psychological level. All these have consequences, important consequences with lots of cardiovascular risks, consequences on the quality of life, but also lots of difficulties to adapt to exercise. This is particularly visible when looking at the maximal oxygen consumption values, since VO2 peak is considered as one of the most interesting parameters to evaluate physical fitness and health. Here you have the data of several populations, and as you can see here, a young sedentary paraplegic has a VO2 which is lower than the one from a sedentary elderly subject, and on average it can be compared to VO2 values in people with chronic heart failure. So this shows us how bad it could be. What could we do to prevent this problem? Well, in able-bodied subjects, we know that exercise training, and more especially aerobic exercise, has very beneficial effects with, as shown here, muscular, cardiovascular, metabolic benefits. So one could wonder, would it be the same with SCI patients? Would aerobic exercise be beneficial for these people? It's not that easy. Indeed, there are some exercise limitations in people with SCI, preventing them from doing aerobic exercise. Among these limitations, we can cite the limited muscle mass involved in exercise, the non-weight bearing below the lesion, the impaired vasoconstriction of the non-active tissue, and as a consequence, the lack of muscle pump in muscle. To that, we can add the overuse injuries, and more especially from the upper body. We talked about that this morning when speaking about arm cranking, etc. So it appears essential to us to develop and to propose a method involving a greater muscle mass. That's why we are here today, electrical stimulation. Briefly, what is electrical stimulation? All of you know that probably. It's an electrical impulse sent through the skin via adhesive electrodes most of the time, inducing an action potential on terminal endings, going through the neuromuscular junction, inducing a muscle contraction. Duchenne de Boulogne, we saw him this morning, was the first one to use electrodes to use electrical stimulation on the skin with different phases like we showed this morning. And since de Boulogne work, electrical stimulation has been extensively used with mainly three different applications. The first one is training, second one is recovery, and the third one is rehabilitation. We'll talk about two of them today, training and rehab. For training, in decades, hundreds and hundreds of studies have investigated the effects of electrical stimulation as a training tool for athletes in different sports. You have lots of examples here. I will just take two of them just to show you what we have. The first one on hockey player. You can see here that only 3 12-minute sessions of electrical stimulation a week during 3 weeks induced an increase in the skating velocity. Similarly, electrical stimulation used in rugby player allow a significant, very big increase of strength in this rugby player. Given the specific recruitment of fibers, just what we said before, in electrical stimulation as compared with voluntary contraction, one could wonder what is the nature of the adaptations obtained after training in electrical stimulation. Well, we have this on this graph. So you can see here that during the first 4 weeks of training, strength increases. Similarly, neural parameters increased, whereas muscular adaptations are not present. Then, from week 4 to 8, strength is still increasing, with almost nothing on the neural aspect, and great increases on the muscular parameters, showing that at the beginning of training you have mostly neural adaptation, and after 4 weeks hypertrophy and muscular adaptation are occurring. This is the same that what is observed during voluntary resistance training. Another aspect on electrical stimulation, I told you, it's rehabilitation. Just a quick reminder here, when we talked about electrical stimulation for training, most of the time this training is done in isometric condition. When we talk about electrical stimulation for rehabilitation, it's used to produce functional movement, not isometric contraction, functional movement. For that reason, it's called functional electrical stimulation. Among these movements, we can cite foot drops, standing, walking, cycling, and so on. Historically, FES has been used to help a paraplegic subject to stand. It was back in the 60s. Then it improved with implantable electrodes. It helped subjects to walk. And then it developed again and again, and lots of applications are now available. Here we'll focus on FES cycling. That's the purpose of the day, because what is of interest for us here is exercise. So, exercise with FES cycling. I won't spend too much time here on FES cycling because we had already several presentations on that topic this morning. Just to say that FES cycling is probably the mostly known and the mostly studied FES modality, and we have lots of results showing great improvements in VO2 after FES cycling. As you can see on this graph, improvements ranging from 9% to 63% depending on the characteristics of the subjects and of the training protocol. However, it's, when we speak about training, it's very important to keep in mind that to be beneficial, the exercise performed must reach a certain intensity. Indeed, it's now well known that exercise should be above 6 METs to have a beneficial impact to reduce coronary heart disease. Moreover, this intensity, we know that more vigorous the exercises, the greater health benefits we will have. So we want a great intensity. If we look at the Fick equation, here we see that maximal VO2 is the product of the adaptations occurring at the cardiovascular level, pulmonary level, and muscle level. So, on the basis of this equation, it appears necessary to involve the greatest mass possible in the exercise to have the greatest VO2 possible, to have the greatest effects possible. To that, first option, hybrid FES cycling, meaning adding arm cranking, upper body exercise, to the FES cycling. This could be done either in a separate workout, meaning that you come to a session, firstly you exercise your leg with FES cycling, and then you exercise your upper body with arm cranking. Or you can do it at the same time, meaning that you have to pedal with the arm and with the legs at the same time. Second option, and that's why I'm here today, is FES rowing. So basically, FES rowing is the alternate stimulation of the quadriceps muscle and the hamstring muscle. Basically, the rower is seated on the rowing machine, having a button in the end. Pressing the button will send the current to the quads. We are here. He presses the button, current is sent to the quads. Quads contract and the seat is going back. Then finishing the movement by pulling the handle. This is what we have here. Once we have a full extension, releasing the button, it will switch the current from the quads to the hamstring. The hamstring will contract and the seat will come back in the initial position. So by doing this, you will have a very fluent, a very good rowing movement. I will show you some videos after that. And by doing that, you have an exercise involving pretty much all muscles, at least a great muscle mass. This is one of the advantages of FES rowing. So work is distributed across a large muscle mass to produce high level of aerobic exercise. Second advantage, non-innervated legs initiate a force vector which is pretty much similar to weight bearing. And the hemodynamic profile is comparable to the able-bodied since we have a coordinated movement, leg and arm. However, it's not that simple and you have several obstacles to FES rowing. The first one is muscle atrophy, occurring in pretty much all people with spinal cord injury. Spasticity, muscle fiber type shift from slow to fast myotypology. The motor recruitment pattern, we talked about it just before. And if you take all of these, you have two main consequences. At worst, this will prevent the subject to row, because he's not able to move his body weight across the rowing machine, because the muscles are too weak, and at least the rowing session will be very short, because fatigue occurs very fast. So we found a way to overcome these obstacles. It's to do strengthening before and at the same time that rowing. So muscle strengthening to make them stronger, to have them being able to row. So this is what we call step 1 in our training program. So our training program is that I will present you right now. So three steps. Step 1 was the Lawalin strengthening. As you can see, for this step, the subject is seated either in the wheelchair or on a simple chair or on his sofa bed, whatever, with electrodes on the quads. The idea is to produce an alternated stimulation of both legs quadriceps in order to induce the full leg extension. And we want to obtain the full extension during 30 minutes. So here is a small video to show you what it looked like. So on this video, it was what we were looking for, full extension. You have to keep in mind here that for some people, depending on the delay post-lesion and on the muscle atrophy and so on, this could never occur or last during 3 contractions and then nothing, because what we said before is that with electrical stimulation, you stimulate the muscle fibers which are just below the electrode. In paraplegics, once these muscle fibers are fatigued, there is no contraction anymore. Okay? So the idea is to make this last longer and longer until 30 minutes. Once we have the full extension during 30 minutes, we move to step 2. Step 2 was still strengthening, but performed on the rower, but without moving the arm or nothing. It's just being seated on the rower, and the stimulation this time is both legs at the same time, to have the seat move back and forth. It's almost what you would have if you were doing leg press for strengthening. Because here, the subject has to move his own body weight on the rower, so it's adding resistance to the strengthening. Just doing this, step 1 was strengthening without resistance. This one is strengthening with resistance. And you can even add resistance by putting something here on the back, so that you have a slope, and the subject will have to go against the slope, and it will be even a bigger constraint and therefore a bigger exercise. Same thing, we wanted to obtain full extension, full movement during 30 minutes. Some results we obtained with this. We measured the evoked torque on Biodex, so in isometric condition. And as you can see here, we obtained a 59, on average, a 59 increase of the evoked torque, and a 76 increase in the muscle mass. The muscle mass was measured with an ultrasound machine, and we looked at the muscle width on the vastus lateralis muscle. And it's important to keep in mind that these results were obtained only after 3 months of training with this method. Afterwards, after that, if we want to explain, to say a word about this result, 3 months, strength increased, muscle weight increased. So it seems that increases in muscle mass are particularly important if you want to increase the muscle strength. Step 3 was FES rowing. So exactly the same protocol that I explained before, an alternated stimulation of the quadriceps and the hamstring in a coordinated manner to induce the rowing movement. So it takes several sessions to have the subjects being able to integrate the switch movement. Okay, if I want to go back, I have to press the button. If I want to go to the front, I release. And this coordinated with the arm, it takes like 1 or 2 sessions, and then it's okay. And we wanted them to row during 30 minutes at least 75% of their maximal heart rate. It could be 30 minutes in a row, so continuous rowing, or it could be intervals depending on what the people were able to do and what was the target of exercise training. 2 videos. So this is at the very beginning, second or third session of rowing. So you see that it's pretty shy rowing. So during this session, in order to have the important workout I was talking about before, the rowing movement at one time was stopped. Then the subject just did the pulling to have a good amount of exercise, and we started with the legs again, stop, pulling, etc., etc., so that we have a good workout during the session. And after a few months of rowing, we have a pretty good rowing movement, as you can see here. And this improvement is particularly visible on this graph, showing the average watts developed during training session across weeks of training. So you have here a good improvement of what is done during the session. Few results right now of this study. The evoked torque increased at around 170%, the muscle mass 100%, the VO2 peak 20%, and this after only 6 months, 3 months of strengthening and 3 months of rowing, with 2 sessions a week. So very impressive results obtained in people. In this group, there were people who were not exercising that much before, and there were also athletes who were already physically active and engaged in sport competition. So these results are not only because they were very weak at the beginning. No, it's also the same for people already well trained. Otherwise, so 3 months of rowing, strength and muscle mass keep going up and up, and it showed us that it was important, very important, to work against resistance. But most interestingly, aerobic capacity increased a lot, It suggested that strength training and muscle mass increases are very important to have these effects. This is particularly important. I'll just say a few words about that now, but it's in our perspective. But it's important since if you think about a performance perspective, years ago, I spoke with a person in charge of performance in different sports, and he told me, yes, it's an interesting method, but when they are in competition, the paraplegic won't have the steam unit on them, and so it's not useful. That's where he's wrong, because the increases you have in VO2 max, if you have them whatever. If you are better, you are better with or without the steam unit, because the VO2 exercise was performed on an arm cranking exercise. So you don't have the steam unit when you are doing arm cranking. By that, I want to say, if we want our athletes in adaptive sport to be better, I have in mind Paris 2024, maybe this would be a great option to have them training if we want them to be better, to achieve the number of medals which have been suggested. The muscle hypothesis, so just the one I just suggested here, is confirmed by several works, and particularly by this study from Taylor in Boston. Taylor and colleagues investigated the VE, so ventilation, oxygen uptake, and level of injury before the relation between these three parameters before and after 6 months of FES rowing. And what they found is that before training, VO2 peak, ventilation, and level of injury were all correlated. However, after training, ventilation was still correlated with the level of injury, but VO2 wasn't. The authors concluded that the improvement in VO2 observed after training was due to adaptations in ventilation, but probably also to adaptations occurring at the muscular level. So this confirms what we found before. So a few take-home messages here. The first one is that FES rowing is a great exercise for people with spinal cord injury. Second one would be strengthening and exercising against resistance is essential. The earlier, the better. This study from still Taylor's team showed that the earlier you do FES rowing after the lesion, the better are the improvement. And I would say the best is yet to come, since we continued rowing, FES training, and we found these results. So when we kept rowing 6 months additional to the 6 first months, we increased the results, so strength by 151, muscle mass 136, VO2 76% of increase, 111 for ventilatory threshold, and even 20% regarding bone density. So all these parameters are essential for people with a spinal cord. To go further, I would say 2 aspects The first one is research. What can we do now to go further with this? One of our perspectives is the modulation of stimulation parameters, so what has been suggested this morning, and we already did some work with that. With this study, so people with spinal cord injury, 2 testing sessions, one with what we called constant frequency train, which was constant frequency at 40 Hz, and the other one, variable frequency train, where we had a doublet at 80 Hz, and then 20 Hz during the rest of the contraction. We measured the torque developed and the number of contractions being performed before what we called fatigue, which was a decrease in 20% of the evoked torque. And the results showed 2 interesting things. On these results, you see that VFT, so variable frequency train, induce more results, more contraction than the CFT. And if we switch, meaning that when the subject was fatigued, if he was performing VFT, we switch to CFT, and the opposite. And we see that doing this, we had a lower fatigue and longer training session when using VFT than when using CFT. So these results are in isometric condition. One perspective would be to do this on the rower, to see if we do that during rowing, if we switch the steam parameters during rowing, do we have longer session, better performance, lower fatigue than when we do that just in isometric contraction on a biodex. And the second perspective to this work is the development of a training program for all people with locomotor disabilities, and not only people with spinal cord injury. So this program is called Stimule-ton Handicap. It's right now available in Dijon or in Boston, but it's a little bit too far. The idea is to give the opportunity to people with locomotor disability to perform exercise, because if they are not involved in sport like basketball or football or anything like this, they pretty much have no opportunity to exercise. The OMS tells us to exercise at least 30 minutes a day at a certain intensity, etc. But you and me, we can go to a gym and do our exercise. For people with these types of injury or disease, it's a little bit more complicated. Some of the gym don't accept them as athletes. So that's why we created Stimule-ton Handicap, and we wanted to open it not only to paraplegics, spinal cord, but to all people with diseases, locomotor diseases, so cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, etc., etc. And for this, we have 2 targets. We have the people who are not athletes and who just want to exercise for health benefits, for well-being. And we also have athletes, because as I said before, if an athlete trains with this method, he will improve in a proportion that he would never reach without this training method. I wonder what kind of training would improve somebody's VO2 max from 80% in 1 year. I think nothing. And what is Stimule-ton Handicap? An individualized program. Each person is taken one by one and tested and then we decide what to do based on the testing result and based on what he or she wants, and it gives us the idea of what we do. Thank you for your attention.